Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast. It's a weekly podcast where two friends who like to feel like who like having like intellectual sounding conversations so that they feel clever, because that's where some of their like self-worth comes from.
Yeah.
Pretty much that. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
And this week we're going to talk about practicing what we preach. Like, we talk a lot of game. We could talk a big game on this podcast.
We talk a very good game.
About climate change, about inequality, about taxes, all those different things. Kindness, patience, respect, all these things we've talked about. But how much do we actually follow through on that when we're tested, when the rubber hits the road, when actually we're faced with an annoying person? We've got to try and be kind. When we're faced with a tempting efficiency that perhaps has a bit more of a climate footprint, a carbon footprint. Like, what are the tests that we face in this world that make us... How do we avoid being hypocrites?
Oh yeah, that's what we should have to avoid, being a hypocrite.
Not being a hypocrite. So, any thoughts on any headlines? Because I thought that was a good one. The actually being nice to people.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do in real life.
Not feel really angry inside when people are being really annoying.
What do you like to preach?
What do I like to preach? Gosh. I think it's easier to not be a hypocrite when there's a good infrastructure around you. Yeah. Good travel infrastructure, recycling infrastructure, alternative energy suppliers, veggie boxes, all sorts of things.
Hashtag institutional change.
Yeah.
Hashtag, like infrastructure.
Sure.
Like it's...
So it's like, if it's you having to make all the decisions yourself on a daily basis, and how much effort are you going to go, when it is me having to make the decisions on a daily basis, and how much additional effort those decisions might translate into in terms of time and travel and all sorts, then it's a bit harder to be. It's
like sometimes practicing what we preach means going away from the familiar and actually trying to figure out a new way of doing something, which is much harder than just doing the thing the way we've always done it. So, I think there's a lot to talk about here.
Yes.
So let's go. Going on my itch.
Let me think of a nice story. I know what I've done. I have created a space in my house where I can have my washing machine, my sewing machine out. Ooh. And I am going to make my child a twirly skirt out of some material I've got left over.
Some old beach stuff that you got off the beach.
No. Yeah, something I found whilst beach combing. No, look, it's this rather fetching swan
seaweed.
Type
That's
material.
lovely seaweed you're showing me right now. No, it's a nice fabric.
So we also watched a YouTube video, she and I, yesterday, on how to... I've just realised that it might end up... all the swans might be upside down. Anyway, that's not here nor there. So yes, I'm lining myself up for making more things. And there's one other thing I did. I boasted about the fact that we've got this insulation on the outside of our house, and we've got these efficient ceiling fans, and we try and control the climate in the house without using aircon. We don't have aircon, but the office gets very warm. So I'm now creating a green canopy outside the office to make sure sun does not shine on it. And I put all the wires up this week, so I'm very excited to see that develop. And already my creepy crawlies are crawling all over that. So
I need a green canopy in front of this window. It gets very hot in here. I might go to... Sharon's going to the knitting and stitching show tomorrow, and I might just go to... I don't know why. Just go to a knitting and stitching show.
I mean, I'm not very...
Then I can start mansplaining fabrics to you with a lot more confidence.
I know how to knit, but I hardly ever finish anything.
No.
I look at it and I go, look, I wonder if I could do that. And I work out how to do it. And then I'm utterly uninterested in finishing it.
Well, that ties into like, the next thing on my list of things to talk about, which, I've been... like this project on Instagram I'm doing is really like I put all this work into learning how to do something, and then I want to actually make things with that. So it's like I'm going to knit a scarf, but it's like there's that you learn how to knit, but then the actual process of now just doing that process it's a different mindset. But I tell you, but then what I was going to say about that was what I'm realizing. Like I feel guilty that I'm not just like making stuff with these things, but the problem is like, when you spend a significant amount of time trying to get something to work and then finally getting it to work, but it's all like barely works, and then you're scared to touch it again because like it's just going to break again, and you don't feel safe to kind of come back to it. And I think that's probably a factor in my sort of historical reluctance to go back to these complicated products. And I'm wondering how Wintergatan, who is making his marble machine on YouTube, it's fun to watch, kind of nerdy maker stuff. But I feel like he spent like 2.5 years building this machine, and it's to kind of switch into the mindset of actually making music on it. I think he's going to struggle. There's like so many details to get right. And because the problem is you're scared to go in and just try and be creative because you're worried you're going to get kicked back into that troubleshooting, problem-solving mode all again. If your knitting needles might change shape at random,
I don't think that. Whilst I recognise the story, I don't think in the instance of knitting's a well-established practice. I think. And so it's like.
In your case, it's just
you
laziness.
Working it out for yourself. Exactly. It's just no follow through. It's like, do I want to sit here knitting, or should I just watch telly? I think I'll watch telly. I'm
just basically saying I'm not being lazy, though. It's not. I'm not the one.
No, you're not being.
I'm being.
Lazy, I am.
My laziness is defensible.
Also, if I knit whilst we're watching telly, Nick will go, "Can you stop making that noise, please?"
Oh. Can't you just do it on his other side?
On his bad ear? Yeah, but then I can't talk to him. But maybe that's what I should do.
It's a sort of like intercom system.
Might help if we tell people that Nick's deaf in one ear.
No, I've got it. I've got a perfect solution. He gets an Apple Watch, which he wears on his right hand. You sit on his left. Do your knitting. When you need to talk to him, use the new walkie-talkie app. Hey, Nick.
The walkie-talkie app is rubbish, by the way.
I've never tried it. I don't know. I just saw that it existed.
It's not very good.
Well, you can just like switch sides based on the, it's fine.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we've solved that problem.
That's great.
Marital issue you're experiencing.
Michael, how are you?
I'll tell you about what's happened this week. Is Sharon's bought a weighted blanket.
A weighted blanket?
So a weighted blanket is a blanket that's got like heavy stuff in it to kind of like pull it down. So it's like 6 kilos or something. Or is it more like?
Right.
So it's a blanket, but it like really kind of like comes down to you, which I
so
actually
you get trapped on the bed.
Well, I actually think, like, in theory, I like the idea, but I don't feel like I've had a good night's sleep all week because I'm having, like, dreams about being confined. Or, like, she'll be there and, like, I'll sort of, I can't get to her because there's, like, an elephant in the middle of the bed that I've got to, like, fight. And just getting out of bed is just, like, the other night, like, the second night, it had kind of, like, gone off me. I was like, I'm just going to kind of go on towards the edge of the bed away from the bloody heavy thing. But I honestly, she keeps going, well, I could just use it on my, I was like, no, I'm behind this as an idea, this weighted blanket. And it wasn't cheap. And she's like worried that I don't like it. I'm like, look, I really think it's a good idea in principle, but I'm having a lot of teething problems with it, getting the hang of it. So I don't know. Jury's out. I mean, I've got sleep data, so I'll share that on the website. We'll see if it improves. But I don't know. There's something about it that I'm just struggling with. It's so heavy. Like it's like, I just want to turn over. But this is a project. So that's that.
Like
We
that.
went mushroom hunting as well
the
other week, but I'm not sure. I think we started like the guy. We had to meet in the back of the pub, and the guy sort of like had a box with some example mushrooms. He had a good old, the red one with the things. It was like, oh, and then the way he was talking, I started thinking like, oh, God, I didn't bring a bag. Like, I mean, I've got one bag, but it sounds like we're going to end up with a box. He was talking about how much you're allowed to pick and all this stuff and the rules and the. You can pick this. And it was like, oh, God, yeah, I'm going to be able to cook dinner with all the mushrooms I'm going to find. It's going to be brilliant. And then we go out, and there's just like the first one, I reckon he was in his freezer, and he just like gets it out for these days and chucks it on the ground under this tree and goes, yeah, and here is a chicken of the woods that looks a bit sketchy. Looks like it's been used a few times. Very conveniently just there. Oh, you found that, did you? Just on the... Right, I see. And then we sort of go around this, like, car park, more or less. We go around this, like, sports field. See a few little mushrooms. It's like, well... I was the first one to actually spot one, and it was like a little brown one in the thing. It was like, oh, these are called little browns, and these are basically pointless. You could maybe eat them, but they're so small and pathetic that why would you bother? So I'm like, all right, geez. And then we kind of find a couple of but it's all rather. There's not much out there. It just feels like I felt like I was foraging more when we were getting from the train station to the pub, because it was Banstead and we had to go up this weird like back alley and things. But then when we actually came to it, it was like we were just walking around the car park of this pub, more or less, and it was like, well, this is quite a letdown. So and it wasn't cheap, but I think the next step is, I think that we learned a lot. I feel like I know which mushrooms I could, like there's a family of mushrooms that are generally going to be safe to pick and eat, that are reasonably substantial. So I feel like if I saw some of those, I could pick and eat those. But we didn't see anything, so
you don't know.
Waste. And he kept like really going on about like foliage for too long. This tree is blah 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 blah. This tree blah 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 blah. This little herb thing that grows in the ground. Like, I'm not here for trees. I'm not here for elderberries. I'm here for mushrooms. I am interested in mushrooms. We want mushrooms. Stop wasting time. So yeah, mushroom thing. So it felt a bit scammy to me, but then I wanted to be in a forest surrounded by bloody I had a dream last night where I found a huge patch of multicoloured mushrooms, and it was very exciting.
Unfortunately, you were trapped under a blanket.
All right, let's get into the thing. Practicing what we preach. Since I just talked for ages, have you got anything you want to start with on this?
I've been thinking about this quite a lot recently, one way or the other, even though...
Any recent hypocrisies to report?
Recent hypocrisies.
No, go. Say what you
I had to put some tins in the bin because I can't bloody work out where to recycle tins around here. It's like, I think you have to go to the supermarket and leave them inside the supermarket. It's sort of too much. Anyway, so that's a recent hypocrisy. I haven't bought anything. I tell you, an hypocrisy. A hypocrisy that was inflicted upon me this week.
Yeah.
Is a product that I shall not name for the purposes of this conversation. We bought well, and outside of the warranty period, it developed a fault. But I emailed them just to ask them how to fix it. Yeah. And they emailed me back saying, we will replace it. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. That's great. But they said, now you need to send us a picture of the original item that you have cut up to show that you won't be using it anymore. And I was like,
what company was this?
yeah,
What sort of company?
It's an inflatable paddleboard, and it's really wonderful. We use ours a lot, but the one that we have, and I cannot, I did not expect it to be replaced. I didn't, I was like, this is great customer service, but you want me to destroy a thing that is still functional as a play in the sea inflatable, even though it doesn't work particularly as a paddleboard. The dog can still jump off it, the child can still jump off it. But I've had to, and I went back and forth, I phoned, emailed, sent them links to my online profiles. I'm like, this is who I am. I'm not going to do anything. I even offered them a brand name for a retired version of their thing. Right. I was like, and they were just like, no, you have to cut it. I was like, and so I can honestly say it's taken me about 8 weeks to come to terms with killing this thing that is just now. And now we've got to work out what we've got to do something with the plastic, because I cannot just put it in landfill. But then I suspect, like in our previous episode when we talked about pencil cases, cluttering up your house, I suspect there'll be a rolled up dead inflatable paddleboard in my loft for the rest of eternity. It's like, oh no, we can't put it. I even offered to post it back to them. I was like, I'll send it to you, you put it in the bin. So
that's a bummer.
Yeah, it's a weird bummer, because how could you possibly be rude about a brand that is replacing a product outside of warranty because it's not right? That is a great thing, but that's not what we're doing these days. We're not just creating chunks of plastic that were actually still inflatable, and you could say anyway. So that was I see that as a shared hypocrisy between me and the organisation. I find but then there's things like, you talk about practicing what you preach. So we are basically vegetarian, unless we have people visiting who we can't be bothered to argue with about vegetarianism. Okay, sure, we'll just do sausages. I can't be bothered.
Do you know that I have never made myself laugh as much as I did the other day in Sainsbury's, where we were in, Sharon was off on one side and I just went to the meat aisle and just filled up my basket with meat and then just wanted to casually just stand there doing the shopping with just a basket absolutely full to the brim with meat. And I could not keep a straight face I couldn't even get my face straight enough to actually find her and stand pretend, because I found this so ridiculously funny, the idea of buying all this meat. There's no point to that. You just reminded me of it. Was there more to your story there?
Not really.
Let me tell you.
Tell me about your hypocrisies, Michael.
The thing that so my latest YouTube video was about how this sort of live rig music electronic thing works. Ivanka starts yawning immediately. That's why I put a monkey in the video explaining it, to try and keep people in for a couple more minutes. But as something at the end of that, I did a sort of little mock-up of a thing that I want to make as a product, maybe. And I've been talking a lot to the other guy in the studio, like a Euro, if you want to know, if you care about this sort of thing, it's a Eurorack live visuals driver thing that you put your phone in, and it projects visuals based on signals that come from the music, stuff controlling the music. But we were actually talking seriously about... I was like, I've got to set up a Kickstarter for this. And then one of the things is how much money do you want to raise? It's okay, well, how much work is this? And we start having this brainstorm about, okay, how much time, the app's probably going to take X amount of time. So I need to double what I think that's going to take. And then we're talking about the production, the hardware stuff. And immediately it goes to, well, you can get the PCBs printed in, blah, and it was just going that. And I was like, wait, stop. Values. I need to do this. If I'm going to make a piece of hardware, I want to go the Fairphone way. I want to Fairphone it, at least on some level. I want to have some sort of repairability, generic components, blah blah blah. But it's it's hard because it's going to be more expensive. So then it needs to be the brand. The brand needs to be that it costs more because it is repairable or whatever, or it's made from generic components that you can repurpose or expand or do all these different things with it. But then just the thing about that as well, I did originally make the prototype of this. It's the spinny. Well, this is a different thing, but the spinny mechanical thing that spins the biscuit around. Like the original version of that, I was like, right, I'm just going to make this out of a breadboard, and like you put in a generic thing, and you can maybe would sell them like this so that you could rewire it a little bit and kind of make it suit you. But then the problem was that the thing was just basically because it's quite hot and it moves a lot, it's going to just shake itself apart. So it does need to be proper soldered, and probably does need, so I'd had to redo the whole circuit board for it. And it's even just in terms of R&D, just being able to do this, I would have to find some optimum balance of landfill circuit boards that will probably, that are cheaper to manufacture. But the trouble is, a lot of the time, the stuff that is less reusable is also better. Works better. It's smaller, it's more compact. Solid state stuff just soldered straight on there, and a custom thing is probably going to work better than something where the chips can fall out.
Yeah,
this is what kind of drove me to this. It's this is the crunch point. This is the time at which I am asked, I've been talking a lot about this and thinking a lot about this. Am I actually going to do it or not, or what? And then having the voice of the opposing thing going, wait, other Michael, wait, stop. It's a hard thing to kind of put the brakes on the kind of, here's how things are usually done, which is hard.
I think it is. So I think about this a little bit in the context of Restaurants Brighton, because at the moment, Restaurants Brighton is a website that is designed and operates. It's not just a website. It's a service to restaurateurs in Brighton. So it has a website. It has food photography. It has social media. It has all these things that are all about getting people excited about promoting the food scene in Brighton. That's what it does. Yeah. And in terms, and then I sit there thinking we've got. I'm looking at the search engine optimization at the moment because we need traffic to the website. That's how we deliver our worth. And then I've got to compete for words like looking for things like how many people are searching for steak restaurants in Brighton, and what do I do about. And I obviously am putting as much effort into steak restaurants as vegan and vegetarian. That's my. Well, I've got no. I need a sustainable business.
Right.
So because it's really sustaining for me at the moment. I wouldn't have time to do this podcast. I wouldn't have time to do the other bits and pieces I'm doing for free if I didn't have this stream of Restaurants Brighton income. But it's at what point do we sort of go, and will there ever be a point where we go, I'm sorry, but we can't promote your product, it flies too far? And I think that's an interesting question. And I think at the moment it's coming close. That moment is coming a bit closer, where you have to sort of choose and go with this sort of business. I mean, the things I've done recently, which isn't on, is I've started a Restaurants Brighton forest and hooked up with a website that based on your traffic tells you how many trees you need to plant and all this kind of thing to offset. And I've done all that kind of actively seeking things that balance out. They did have. I did give. There is this little badge you can put on your website, and they did. But then when you clicked on it to start with, it told you how much traffic there was on the website, and I was like, no, we can't. It's day 2 of me installing this widget. I can't. I don't want to transmit to the world this number. That's up to us to know. If we have a bad traffic day or a good traffic day, the whole business is based on traffic to the website. So if you've got if somebody's curious about how many trees we're planting, and then we have to use Google pay-per-click because we need to drive traffic to the it's our job to promote Christmas parties in Brighton, Valentine's nights out, all these kind of things, and where as a very small business, because that's what it is. What I have done is taken some of our pay-per-click budget and put it onto Bing and ticked I want to make sure this goes to Ecosia as as a partner. So there's small things I can do. I mean, I wish that we were wealthy enough to go, right, we're only promoting this kind of food. We're going to be only this sort of... But and I have bothered to ask the hosting company a year or so ago. I was like, what's your energy supply for your servers? I was like, what electricity do you use to power your computers? and they are fully signed up to all the Google stuff, so technically it's low impact, but it's hard when it comes to like your business. It's not just like, do I cycle 20 minutes down the road to buy 10 eggs from a local farm, or do I get them from the local shop? This is like, now where do principles meet maintaining a business or having a business in the first place?
Yeah, then there needs to be that sort of secondary benefit to it, which is either that it actually helps you save energy and spend less money, or that it helps you have a brand where people come to you because you are doing these things. But like it doesn't. Yeah, it's always kind of more work, isn't it, to actually do it? So it's a project.
And you don't know how many of your customers or how much of your market is actually principled enough to follow through. I don't know. I mean, I know, for example, like with a place like Brighton, where so much of its economy is based around tourism and people eating out and drinking. Like, I'm very happy that we are helping and working with our local community and supporting local businesses and all that element of it, that sort of community societal bit. I'm cool. I'm happy with that. But I think there's I think it's much harder to be principled when you need to pay the bills.
This is what's so poisonous about the sort of Trumpist politicization of climate change and things like that, because now at least it was like a safe thing for any business to say they were doing, like saying, we're green, blah, there was always kind of a good thing for people to say they were doing. But then the politicization of it then means that suddenly you're worried about some people not liking that sort of thing. And it's just absolute poison, isn't it? Like,
it is, yeah. But I think like Fairphoning your music device, I mean, I think there must be more solutions for some sort of low impact sustainable PCB now.
Yeah, probably. We're going to buy we're looking at a CNC cut, like a desktop CNC cutter. So we'll probably do some manufacturing here, and maybe we'll do our circuit boards here. But I don't know if that's because there's the local production versus shipping from somewhere far away. But yeah, there's a lot of questions to ask, and it was like I didn't want to just kind of go. I didn't want to estimate the Kickstarter goal based on the normal way. I wanted to actually spend some time thinking about like what is like a sustainable way of doing something like this, if it's even possible. And I will say in terms of practicing what I preach, the other thing, like I've got a guy in to help me on my other app, my Make a Change Happiness app. And I did say like up front, look, I want to do, I don't know exactly how this works, but I'm committed to this 50% whatever, like we share the profits equally thing, which like again, like when you're faced with it, you're like, but actually though, like, and it's a similar, but then I've talked to someone else about it. It's like, I mean, we still kind of bill for the hours we put in first, so that like, and to be honest, like a lot of these things aren't going to be, it's going to be a long way to get anywhere into the actual profit. So I should, as long as I like get paid for my time, and then everything else is gravy, right? So we split the gravy. So I guess that's okay. But I'm saying it. I've said it, like, so now I've got to stick to it. And it's like, but really?
It was my idea, and I did all the hard work. And
exactly. But then I think that's really, there's the motorbike. There's that, but then like so that's like easy to that's fine. I can say that and then figure that out later. But you know, I've also thought like maybe I'm a not for profit. Maybe I'd like to do things just not for profit, because I'm happy I'm not worried about making. I do want £1 million. Don't get me wrong. part of me does
If
want
anyone's
£1
got
million.
£1 million, they can send it to Michael.
Right.
He'll
Part
have
of
it.
me does want that, but the other part of me feels like, I would be happy just feeling like my existence was sustainable. And with, a slow, I like a bit of status if possible. I'm not an alien. Like, I want to sort of feel like I've got nice things to some extent. But this thing, it's just like...
We went on this...
Can you hear that?
Yeah. We went on this 12K walk last weekend with the 4-year-old, and that takes time because you have to play and be a train. Anyway, at one point she was teaching me how to talk like an alien, but she was going, aliens talk like this, and then we had to have a conversation in alien, which mostly involved going doodle. So by using intonation, we were having a conversation. But yes,
and that's
aliens.
The rest of this podcast will be done in alien.
You have to anyway. So it's quite. When you said I'm not an alien, it reminded me.
Blanked on my alien talk there. Lovely. No, they're not for profit things. So I go to so I'm like, well, maybe I can run this in a different way and run this business because I set up the company, the default thing, find an accountant, do a limited company, but then I sort of I sort of got around to writing the email saying if I wanted to set this up as a not-for-profit or do something like that. And they're sort of they were just like, oh, we don't know how to do that sort of thing. We sort of do these tech companies. And then it turns into, then the prospect of being able to sort of think about it even means, okay, well, I've been using the same accountant since 2011 and the same platform. It's got all my stuff in it. I've got this bank account that's doing this. I've got just the prospect of migrating is just, it's like, oh God, it's such it's so much work that I don't even know if it's right, because maybe I do want, if something takes off, to be rich. I don't know. But maybe the fact that I spend all my stuff on stuff to make more stuff means that it would all kind of go back in anyway, and it should be a not-for-profit, and I can support more people. And that's what I really want to do, is help more people to kind of do this. But but it was just oh God, that just sounds too hard, and I'm just now forgotten about it for 6 months.
I think it's that particular, that system change business. It's accountants are geared up for helping you be tax efficient.
Yeah,
that's
so
kind
that's
of the
next
whole
subject. Yeah.
Model is. We'll save you the money that we cost you type thing. That's what they're there. So when you come in from the left field with a question, I went to meet an accountant, and he knew who I was. Well, he knew my name. He knew what I did. He could have checked me out, like a new client. I was coming to talk about 2 businesses, blah, blah, blah. And then in front of me, he made some joke about, least Labour won't get in and we'll have to pay 90% tax. I was like, mate, so who do you think I am? What? It's I'm not going to. And then, but it's just sort of this mindset of being the money counter. Yeah. I wouldn't mind finding a sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, a socialist accountant who kind of helps you balance out. Of course, I also don't want to pay more tax than I'm due to pay.
And there's water flows the way it, it finds the path of least resistance. And it's just with tax and things like that, it's so hard to consciously make a decision to have less money. It's but then I would have less money.
Yeah, I have a bigger bill.
And my ideas are so brilliant that I should have enough money in order to pursue them.
Society needs me.
Society needs me.
Needs me with my creative juices flowing free. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a tricky one, the money and tax one. Not that I remember when I first started freelancing this time round, I thought, do you know what? I'll be a sole trader, because then it's very hard to avoid. Then you really are paying a tax on the money you take home, and that's it. But you can't then do any contracting work because everyone wants you to be a limited company and have insurance that covers. So you can't I couldn't do any government contracts as a sole trader. So, okay, fair enough then. There you go.
I,
then.
I will
I've
say,
tried.
I will say, a few years ago when the accountant, when the guy was talking about and saving tax, I was like, well, it's not the be all and end all to pay less tax, I don't think. But it was just like it clearly fell on. I would have had to really, really somehow. He would have had to change his worldview too significantly to really take that idea into account.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
If life's a building to be risen up inside with every level progress in your life, I took a lift up and pressed the panic button just in time.
I suppose, on paper, I'm a big cheerleader for humanity and human nature and the ultimate goodness of people. Like, cooperation is in our DNA, and it really is like the default. I think we crave together. We crave being part of something and friends and people, having other people around us. But it's hard to reconcile that with how generally isolated I tend to keep myself from too many people, because I find it. It's one of the. I just find it a bit exhausting. I think if it doesn't take a lot of disagreement with someone for me to either not be bothered with them, or I don't know. I find it hard to follow through on that value in real life.
Well, I was thinking about this in the context of like opinions and judgment and persuading people, because I was thinking about it as I was on a different run another day. I was thinking about David and Ed Miliband, and if only they'd have sorted out their sibling rivalry in private like everybody else has to, instead of in public, we could be in a very different place politically right now. But and then I was thinking about my siblings and the way that we are, my family, my immediate family, we are allowed to have strong opinions about everything at each other. Well, why are you doing that? It's ridiculous. If you don't agree with me, I'll give you a dead leg type, resolving of issues that you just can't do with everybody else, and you're not. So in many ways, it's much easier to be superficially friendly and open with lots of people than it is to truly be a friend.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many truly deep friendships and relationships one can have.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Like,
it's hard to.
If you, it's like if you're like, there's no need to be rude to people, and this is where I struggle, because I like people, and I think that's one of the things I think I didn't say when we spoke about leadership. It helps when you lead people if you like people, I think, and I like people, so I will never deliberately do anything that will screw somebody over. Yeah. But I think, just because I like them and I want them to do well doesn't mean I want them in my house. You know what I mean? Like, do you know what I mean? It's like there's the I can't be truly friends with everybody that I like. Mm-mm. I think I mostly, with regards to humans, practice what I preach in terms of trying to be kind. I listened to this podcast the other day by that guy off the telly he's the doctor, and he goes in someone's house and they've got a problem, and then he examines their whole life. I can't remember his name. And I've only listened to one episode, but it was about parenting. But it was this interview with a psychoanalyst woman who talked about the fact that, it's not just in relationships with your children, but with everybody. if you can be really honest, and she used the example of when she took her child to the park when the child was little, when she wanted to go home, when her mother wanted to go home, she'd go, "Come on, darling, we've got to go home now, and we've got something else to do." But when she wanted her kid to go home, she'd go, "Look, I know you're having a nice time, but we've been here for half an hour and I find this really boring. I want to go home." And so that's sort of, I think the bit where I am least principled is this thing where I don't want, whilst I want to persuade people or introduce people to the things that I'm doing, I also want to be liked.
Yes.
So if you take the Greta Thunberg example, and I was listening to our podcast, the drafts, and I was thinking about like, what is it about her? Why do people hate her so much? It's like, I think a lot of it is jealousy. I, as a 13-year-old in school, remember being in this, like, I don't know, youth community meeting and crying and explaining to people why it was really bad that rubbish was everywhere and we needed to do a clean up and all these things. But I did nothing about that because I wanted them to like me. I didn't want to be like the an outcast. I wanted to be part of the school, part of the community. So I didn't go off on my own and do some weird thing. I just stayed friendly. And it's the same now in this world where, I genuinely am in fear of the future. But when I'm having a conversation with some of the, the mums that I'm in this new community, or any community, it's not even this one, same in Brighton, you can't have every conversation with somebody going, "Yeah, we don't do that because climate change," or "No, I'm afraid, could you," like even writing my daughter's party invitations, I wrote, "Please don't feel obliged to bring a present unless you already have something or you've got something you're getting rid of or whatever." But I didn't say don't bring her presents. And she still ended up with a load of shit that, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's hard to be full on principled and still fit into society.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to hurt someone's feelings and
No.
or make someone feel like judged or someone feel like they made a mistake. Like I just remember the Christmas present conversation, and I said I just wasn't even thinking about it, but sort of said, yeah, and I'd just quite like to stay away from like landfill stuff, certainly. And then like my stepsister pipes up and goes, "Oh yeah, sorry, I just kind of bought everyone loads of landfill stuff last year." And I was like, "Yeah, so no, it's fine. That's not. I wasn't trying to kind of imply that I'd sort of forgotten, but yeah, no, I do remember kind of going." I remember thinking, God, I really should have said something, like instead of just like forgetting, never getting around to saying something before it happened. But like this year, but yeah, it's you want to. I don't like that feeling of worrying that someone doesn't want to talk to me anymore and doesn't like me anymore, and I don't know what I said, or I suspect that maybe I shouldn't have said this, but especially if they're not talking to you, so you don't know which thing it is that you said that you would like a chance to qualify in a kinder way. It's a tightrope.
It is a tightrope. On the subject, if in waste conversation we're talking about like health versus waste or whatever, in this one it's like, you're living by your principles may involve a degree of society, or social exclusion that isn't always,
Even like my YouTube video, like that comment I got the other week from, I don't like laptops, this is why. And then just got this comment from some poor guy that was like, "I put loads of work into this and you're making me feel like that's not valid," or something. I'm like, no, I don't. No, don't not like me though. And I'm not being horrible to you, even though you're doing the thing that I've said is, I don't know. Like it's hard to, you don't like, it's hard to, you don't want to sacrifice connection you just want everyone to change. You just want everyone to understand. I just want to change people to understand so that we're all on the same page. We can all still be friends. But when you're the one, what if when you're the one that doesn't hold to the commonly held conception, then it's, there's probably no way of moving the school of fish back. I'm thinking of that poster in Fargo season 1, I think it is. It's like, what if you're right and everyone else is wrong? Like there's a fish swimming in the opposite direction. If you're that fish and like you're not friends with all those other fish, so
No.
you're sort of sacrificing something for your values. Like, is there any? I suppose, yeah, this can be a. You feel like you're sacrificing something, whether it's profits, whether it's
Yeah.
friendship, whether it's
Yeah.
to kind of like practice what you preach. It's as much as like eco-friendly. You know, there are profits to be made by doing stuff in a sustainable way. There's different types of rewards for doing that, and actually, probably if people could work out the details of it, would be just as profitable as any other way. But there's a sacrifice, I guess, just even trying to do something innovative that is sustainable. You're sacrificing a lot of your own time into something that isn't directly going to benefit you, even if it does kind of benefit the industry in the future, as now that this knowledge exists. But sorry, is anyone going to know what I'm saying there? I don't know. But yeah, like sacrifice versus you probably have to sacrifice something.
Yeah. I think
I was just thinking of a counterexample to, do you always have to sacrifice something?
Well, I think if you're going to be choosy about work, you have to turn down work, possibly sacrifice. You know, you're like, I'm not going to work for that sort of a company. I'm not going to do, like, for the people who work for Shell and work for BP. You know, can they afford to not, to not work for them? But I don't think that thing is necessarily of value. Like, if I'm talking about sort of persuading people to change the way that they live, or acknowledging or joining us in putting pressure on politicians. If I'm going to be all friendly and pussyfoot around it, I'm basically sacrificing my child's future just for an immediate like. I mean, it's a bit heavy.
Well, politician. There's the sort of the traditional politician is the person that tries to kind of like pander to everyone and sort of doesn't really say anything. So like your normal professional politician is just like an empty, plump husk, right? Doesn't like ever say anything that anyone could take offence to. So I like that now we've got AOCs in like getting through who are tremendously vocal about things like Bernie Sanders. I hope that it's the heyday of the person. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump is polarizing and value driven, I suppose, as much. Oh no, he's not though. He'll just say anything. I don't know. Is he? His values are racism and like.
I don't know that they are. It's the
thing.
same with like Boris. I think Boris is whatever the latest thing is that will get him likes.
Yeah, no, Boris is the absolute, epitome of no values and all just like, I'm going to do what works.
Yeah, but I think that...
And I do feel sad that Corbyn, who seemed so I was like, oh, someone with values in politics. Oh, brilliant. And that seems to have just completely been stomped on. As far as I can tell.
I haven't
even watched him talk for so long. Like, I
don't really know what's happening. I don't understand.
You're not electable. You need to be electable. Your music needs to be listenable. Your food needs to be eatable. Like what's there's all these words for like. It's just got to be a bit. It's got to work for everyone, so it can't be too. Can't stick out too much. It can't be too interesting. It can't be too values. It can't be too specific. Like I don't know.
I think it's easier if you define who you want to be liked by. Do you know like the everybody thing just doesn't really cut the mustard, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just a little whinge about like practicing what I preach. Like I find it. I'm like, am I a fucking musician or what? Like, when did I talk about live music? I talk about playing live. And when did I last play? Like months ago. And that was months and months before I played then. I was like, how can I cringe if anyone calls me a musician.
Why?
Like, it makes me like flinch because like I feel so guilty about how much I am not acting that way. But it's like, I don't know, like you can't just, I don't know.
I think that's you're being, you're being too rigid in your definitions.
I don't know. No, but I mean,
Which in
I
a
think my
conversation
values
about
are that
principles and values is quite an interesting thing to say, but
my values are not. I'm not following through on my artistic value. I'm finding something that I can do that feels relatively safe and sustainable and interesting to me. But am I going and putting myself out there in the way that this core of my identity is sort of, I don't know. I that's one that just really gets me down. Like I just feel like such a hypocrite saying that I am any sort of thing. I don't know. Or I feel, I don't know.
I think we all have this all the time, and this is the therapy bit. But it's like I was literally thinking about this the other day. How last summer when we were here, and I just worked on Restaurants Brighton, I couldn't cope with it. I didn't like it. I was like, I am a digital consultant, user researcher, designer who has spent 20 plus years developing my career. I can't, why? I'm not, I really struggled with who.
A webmaster.
I am not going to sit here fixing bugs on a website and looking at SEO reports. Who do you think I am? And I really, no exaggeration, I struggled with it. And still, and this year I just feel like there's a balance, and I'm not necessarily never going to go back to that other thing. But right now, and what is wrong with just, quote unquote, running a website and, having more time for my child and whatever for this period of time. I'm still staying current. I think when I do have conversations, like when you make little scraps of music that go on your Instagram or on your YouTube, and my daughter sits there listening to it and bopping, it's like you are a musician. You're just not being a...
Compared to people that don't do any of it, don't make any music.
Yeah, but
I'm definitely a musician.
But so many people don't have the skills to make music. And I think it's a whole...
So you think like sometimes it's not, you don't actually have to do it all the time to still be it.
No,
I don't know.
And I don't think it's like I do think there are cycles and waves in life, and different things come up at different times. And I think, there's nothing, and we keep the skills and we keep the things that are part of us.
We value, yeah.
And that's, but they don't always get full emphasis.
Expression.
They don't. That's it.
It's true. But I am actually enjoying my little thing at the moment, so it's good.
I think so. I think it's fun, and I think by you not being your definition of a musician, you're making more engaging content. I think all of it boils down to not taking oneself too seriously.
The thing I worry about is making excuses not to follow through on those values, not to, like, just finding a way, talking around, telling myself a story that like relieves me of responsibility for actually like practicing what I preach. Which I think probably a lot of those people in those boardrooms have got very good at telling themselves a story that lets them off the hook for the atrocities they're committing.
Yeah.
And I don't want to become that. So I'm policing. I police myself quite a lot when I'm sort of looking at my values and looking at my behavior. I think, I don't know, like sometimes you just kind of get sucked into it. But no, that's why I found it so hard to just work for some straight up growth company.
Yeah.
Even though everything was nice about it, kind of pretty much. But like just the fact that it was fundamentally that thing that I've been talking a lot about, how much of a problem it is. The police kept like hacking away at my soul, and like until I just was like, okay, fine, I'll stop.
The principles police.
Yeah.
I've just realised that we've just done a really, really drawn out. I'm a feminist, but
yeah.
But but I think this is the thing about principles that I think is principles and values. We're using the things kind of interchangeably, and I think. I don't know that they are, but that's a separate philosophical conversation. But I don't know. But so we spoke about the fact that I'm sure I've told you this story before, but like my sister and I had this long drawn out conversation over many months while she was doing her philosophy degree about whether or not it was the death penalty thing and killing people. And then when I was I was away with Canonical for work on when Osama bin Laden got assassinated, and one of the people I was sitting next to was like, "Right, it's the best thing ever," and I was like, "No, it's wrong. How can you say that?" And then he was talking about. Then his immediate next leap was to the fact that, well, if somebody attacked you, wouldn't you kill them? And I was like, well, I don't think I can still have a principle. That it is never okay to kill somebody, but if I was under attack, I don't know, I'd defend myself. I don't know what would happen. I don't think I'd be one of those people that didn't actively defend. And it's an extreme example of principles, but you're kind of, I think a principle defines an intent, a final destination type thing. This is how I want to be. And then life is sort of working towards that in a way. You're like always striving to this sort of print to be. And I think...
And then there's kindness to yourself, and there's making mistakes, and there's forgiveness.
Yeah,
and
there's
all
these
things
words
around
that are
it that you just try and be this thing that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The platonic ideal does not exist. Like real reality is dirtier than that, wetter.
And I think it's just all very messy. But I think there is this like deciding. It's part of the conversations is even deciding and understanding what you value. And I think that's hard.
Yes, and that's hard to
and
find.
I have a
and
lot.
that's the
I have
adolescence panic.
Yeah, I have a lot of these mentory chats that I have with people are like, well, who do you want to be? What do what sort of a person? What are the bits that you don't want to compromise on? Where or would like to not compromise on? And I think
and it does keep happening. My Berlin time made me cement my anti-laptop stance. And I was like mid-30s,
Yeah. It's not you sort of come to a thing. And you're like, no, I've thought about it for now 20 years, and I definitely
I'm
don't.
just coming out against.
So it takes time to understand that, and then it takes even longer to try and implement it. To truly be like, it's just life. And I think
implementation is immediately I'm looking to my left. It's like, God, this has been a long implementation phase for this principle that I've adopted. God damn it.
But it's like, you kind of get the design and then implementation, understanding what you're trying to do, implementing it.
Brand values.
Okay.
My brand values, prototyping. Iteration, all comes back to software. People, everything comes back. Just look at software development. We have just sorted so much stuff out.
Understand the world.
Got processes for so many things. Yes.
There you go.
All right, thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, go to grandpodcast.com with your friends and subscribe them.
Literally.
Where can people find you on web?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
Find me at michaelforestmusic.com. If you fancy, we've got a Patreon. Blow some, express your values in sponsoring us. Just join the hundreds and thousands of people that already donate. Be part of this party. What else can people do?
People can, apart from telling your friends that you listened to this weird podcast the other day and you thought, well, they might enjoy it.
Yeah, they're very posh voices, actually. I think they're really well spoken.
Has somebody
I
said
don't
that?
know who's saying that. I don't know, like someone that's quite well spoken though. The two of them, they're quite posh sounding.
Uh-oh. There's a knock on the door.
Well, let's just finish. Say bye.
Bye.
What can people do? Quick.
Right,
What
it's
can
ratings and reviews, please. Ratings and reviews, please.
Feed the bots, feed the algorithms, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye.